For centuries, the Greek battlefield was dominated by hoplites, heavy soldiers with long spears, huge shields, and shining armor. They marched in close formation, forming an almost impenetrable human wall. They were the pride of the polis, and the nightmare of any frontal enemy. But one day, from the margins of the Greek world, the Peltasts arrived. Nothing about them commanded respect. They had no armor. They wore simple tunics. Instead of bronze shields, they carried a crescent-shaped wicker shield, called a pelt, hence its name. They were armed with light javelins, not 3-meter spears. And instead of resisting, they ran. At first, the Greeks saw them as minor infantry, mercenaries from Thrace or other peripheral regions. Warriors for secondary tasks, harass, scout, throw missiles, and then run away before actual contact. In other words, annoying but dispensable. But what no one expected is that this agile, flexible, and lethal combat style from a distance would be exactly what would end up humiliating the invincible hoplites. The Peltasts were the symbol of a new way of waging war, less rigid, less ritualistic, and much more effective in certain terrain. And although they did not have the fame of the Spartans nor the power of the Macedonians, they were the nightmare of traditional Greek warfare. How did they do it? The key wasn't strength, but speed. In a world where heroes were measured by the weight of their armor and the length of their spear, Peltasts broke all the rules. His shield, the pelt, was neither bronze nor imposing. It was made of wicker and leather, light and curved, just enough to cover the torso without impeding movement. Their main weapon? Lightweight javelins, not one, but several, that could be thrown quickly, accurately, and from a variety of positions. And most importantly, they could do it while running. That was its great advantage, mobility. While a hoplite needed to hold his place in a tight formation and advance slowly as part of a bronze wall, a peltast could flank, harass, spear and flee. They weren't fighting to endure, they were fighting to wear down. Imagine this, a line of hoplites plodding across uneven terrain, sweltering in the heat, trying to maintain formation. And in front of them, swift, elusive peltasts, launching a shower of javelins and disappearing before they could react. And when they tried to chase them, the peltasts just ran faster. It was guerrilla warfare in the middle of the classical world. They were not looking for face-to-face combat. They sought to break the rhythm, exhaust the enemy, exploiting their blind spots. This fighting style, based on agility and the environment, changed the perception of light infantry in Greece. They were no longer just the cowards in the background, now they were lethal tacticians with mobility as a shield. And this effectiveness was not just theoretical. There was a day when they proved that even the best could be defeated, including the Spartan hoplites. For centuries, Spartan hoplites were considered almost invincible. Trained from childhood, disciplined to the point of inhumanity, and armored with the finest armor of their time, they were the elite of the Greek world. No one in their right mind would think that light infantry, without armor, could even stand up to them. And yet that was exactly what happened at the Battle of Sphacteria in 425 BC. During the Peloponnesian War, the Spartans were trapped on a small island off the coast of Pylos. Athens, which controlled the sea, decided to blockade them and besiege the island. The Spartan hoplites resisted, as expected, but Athens did not send more hoplites to confront them. Instead, he sent peltasts. Day after day, the light infantry approached, threw javelins, stones and missiles, and retreated. The Spartans, unable to reach them or respond from their defensive position, began to fall one by one. The incredible thing is that the hoplites could do nothing. Every time they tried to charge, the peltasts would simply scatter, surround them, and attack again from a distance. It was a slow, humiliating, psychological punishment. And in the end, the unthinkable happened, the Spartans surrendered. Yes, the same ones who preferred to die rather than surrender. It was so shocking that it shook all of Greece. The image of the invulnerable Spartan warrior was shattered. And those who achieved this feat were not other hoplites, but the despised Peltasts. From that moment on, no one underestimated them again. The war had changed. And the Greek generals took note. But where did these Peltasts come from? How did they go from cheap mercenaries to key players in the war? In their early days, Peltasts were neither proud citizens nor professional soldiers. They were foreign mercenaries, mostly Thracians, hired by Greek cities for minor tasks. They were paid to do what no hoplite wanted to do: harass, spy, ambush, and often die ingloriously. They were considered second-class soldiers. Cowards, some said. Sheep meat, others said. But little by little, its effectiveness began to speak louder than prejudices. Greek generals began to see that in certain situations, especially in mountainous terrain, uneven or wooded, the Peltasts did more damage than an entire line of heavy hoplites. In addition, its cost was much lower. They did not require large formations or Spartan-style training. Just good aim, speed, and a bit of daring. Over time, more and more armies began to seriously integrate them. Athens, after the Spartan humiliation at Sphacteria, gave them a prominent place. Even Sparta, yes, the same ones who had underestimated them, began to use light infantry to compensate for their tactical limitations. They were no longer just peripheral mercenaries. The Peltasts became a specialized unit. Some Greek citizens even began training as Peltasts, copying their style and tactics. They had gone from cheap filler to an essential tool of war. But like any tactical innovation, his reign also had an expiration date. The arrival of a new, more advanced and lethal military model caused Peltasts to begin disappearing from the battlefields. What happened to them? The Peltasts mastered the art of harassment, ambush, and attrition. But as is often the case in military history, a new innovation was about to arrive, and it would change everything: the Macedonian phalanx. With Philip II of Macedonia and then his son Alexander the Great, the Greek military model was transformed. Instead of relying on heavy hoplites or scattered Peltasts, the Macedonians introduced a more versatile infantry. Armed with the famous sarissas, very long spears that kept the enemy at bay. But not only that, the Macedonian army was an integrated system. It combined elite cavalry, heavy infantry, archers, slingers, and yes, also light troops. However, the specific role of the Peltast began to dilute within these new, more complex formations. The Hellenistic and Roman armies inherited many tactics from the Peltasts, but they were no longer called that. Javelins continued to be used, skirmishers continued to exist, but the name and figure of the Peltast as such faded over time. Still, his legacy was lasting. The Peltasts proved that speed and intelligence could overcome brute force. That you didn't need a shell to make history, and that even the marginalized on the battlefield could redefine the rules of the game. Long before modern warfare, they were already practicing tactical mobility, lightning attacks, and irregular combat. They were, in many ways, the precursors of the old-fashioned guerrilla fighter. And although history rarely mentions them, their shadow remains present every time lightness triumphs over rigidity. And cunning to pride.